Excellent. So what we're talking about today in today's webinar is about how ICC looks at communication from a managed Wi-Fi monetization and also Internet of Things standpoint. And so as a result, we're going to cover a few things. We're going to cover migration, all right, where there is obviously the evolution of particularly wireless technology, but also you see the same thing in wired technologies, such as in gig to 10 gig to 40 gig to 100 gig, et cetera, and in some cases 25 gig as well. But we're going to cover a few areas in particular where we look at from the perspective of providing managed wireless solutions out, some of the feature sets that are typically needed in doing so, as well as some of the areas that are needed for enhancing service, as well as return on investment and total cost of ownership as well. So we'll walk through some of the factors driving Wi-Fi performance and management demands, as well as do a quick example as we see a migration from Wave 1 to Wave 2, 802.11ac. Regardless of the technology, some of the questions being asked are equally as important for some of the other market segments, whether they be switching, cellular, and others that we do get into. We'll then take a look at how ICC also addresses some of these and provide solutions that enhance as well as enable MSP partners to be able to deal with the changing tide of how content has become so prevalent and so important in the marketplace. And then obviously the monetization of that. What are the tools available? How are those tools set up? What's the interaction with those tools to then monetize that environment? And then a brief summary. So let's go ahead and get started. From an executive overview perspective, what we're looking at is basically what we've seen in the marketplace from an ICC perspective is obviously this near insatiable need for more connectivity. It's not merely a North American trait. It is a global trait where we're seeing more mobile devices come into the marketplace. So the connectivity of things, so it's not just human devices, but it's also devices such as machines for machine-to-machine communication, which is anywhere from 5 to 7 times the size of the human connectivity market as well. So it's quite large. So what we're talking about from a data perspective now becomes a vital resource in and of itself, because there is so much physical content that is now available. And then of course the speed of change becomes important, because with such a flood of information, the roads or the networks that the information flows over obviously have to be upgraded or looked at, or taken a hard look at how those networks are put together and what are the changing tides that deal with those network capabilities also. We also look at cost, because cost obviously is very, very, very important from a business perspective and from a potential, from a profit evolutionary perspective as well. So when we look at these three things, what we see in the marketplace as we look at how technology continues to evolve and why managed wireless and monetization and profitability really is such a heavy focus for us in this market segment, we see sort of three main factors changing. One, content has basically become the new resource. For lack of a better word, we liken it almost to the oil industry, where as a natural finite resource, as demand goes, so goes the actual physical market. And right now we're seeing the demand for content and connectivity to continue to escalate at an alarming pace, which makes the control, delivery, and the business models that are used vital to every industry from a business perspective. We also see that the IP network, the roads or the infrastructure that this information flows over also has to be changed, has to become more flexible. How that architecture is arranged, whether or not it continues to move from premise to a cloud-based environment, or vice versa in some instances, or a hybrid, a mixture of all of those, of all of the above, becomes very important, because the the cost of those changes as well as the ongoing change over time is central to how we view the rest of the implementation by a managed service provider that's providing managed wireless and how they're going to monetize that over the longer period of time as well. And then the analytics side of it, this information, this new wealth of this new wealth resource has to be sliced and diced and understood, and then monetized, right? That then becomes the third leg of all of the evolutionary changes that we're seeing from a market perspective. So it's not merely a technology shift that we're seeing. The technology shift incorporates a variety of different areas, demand from a content perspective, as well as the migration from an IP network perspective, and then obviously what do you do with this information and how can you monetize that information? How do you figure out what that information is as well? So those are three major technologies that markets and drivers from a market perspective in the technology market as well. And so there's a natural impact from a hyperconnectivity perspective. What results is basically the Internet of Things and hyperconnectivity ends up growing faster than the network speeds can actually handle. And what does that mean? That basically means that you get a lot more bottlenecking. You get a lot more issues where historically you haven't had issues because not only is the quantity of the data is changing, but the quality and the size of that data is also changing. So we're no longer just looking at emails. We're no longer just searching via text. We're moving towards HD, and we're moving towards video, more interactive environments as well. And that can wreak havoc on a network. And so as a result, managing that network environment, whether that is a wireless and wired as well, becomes vital. And in order to manage that network environment, there are more complex tools that need to be put in place. It's not merely like, as in the old days, just simply an unmanaged environment where it's a free-for-all, basically, because then you won't have good performance. So how do you manage those environments become a vital task, and that why we at ICC enable our partners and help teach our partners how to migrate from unmanaged to a managed environment as well. Locations obviously become vital because now we're not only talking about having information off-site and no longer simply on-premise. You're talking about having more remote users, remote workers, a more disparate and distributed kind of architecture for not only the business model, but also for the technology model as well. And how do you protect that information, which leads us into the security aspect of that, because the more content, the more data, the more information that's physically out there and open and no longer locked down in a singular environment raises the concern of security and having more of that content open to others. Interestingly enough, the other side of hyperconnectivity is that from a global perspective, cities will also continue to migrate to more intelligent platforms. And these intelligent platforms include everything from smart grid technologies, smart meters, and a whole host of other environments that help cut costs and reduce the cost of implementation. So on one hand, we do see this burgeoning and exploding tsunami of content and data and change that's coming. Then on the other hand, from a monetization standpoint, we're already seeing environments where they're able to use technology to reduce costs, use technology to enhance the monetization and the capabilities of their archaic systems to bring them up to speed as well. And then, of course, Moore's Law, where the speed of which we're seeing technology increase continues to get faster and faster. So MSPs are able to help customers design with an understanding that there will be changes moving forward in those design, and what are the tools that you need to decide on which sets of design are created and what tools are needed to meet that expectation for if it's 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, whatever it is, and then how you then execute on those plans. As a brief example, when we talk about IoT, the Internet of Things, and its impact, we oftentimes sort of numbers that people are talking about. And so this is just an example of the speed with and the volume with which we're actually talking about. In the next few years, we're seeing $41 trillion will be spent on infrastructure upgrades. These are upgrades which have to be managed environments so that our clients are able to then better control that content, where the content goes, how the content is encrypted, and other measures with unmanaged environments. $970 per year per fleet, right? If we're dealing with blue, so this is important to printing companies and the UPS. At a technical issue that we had to resolve very, very quickly. So we'll continue on. So as I was saying, regarding this particular slide, enables us to be able to see the extent to the impact that we're looking at. Because of IoT, we're going to see a 22x in just data traffic by the year 2020 as well. So that all becomes very important when we're looking at the ability of our different network environments to handle the traffic from now and also in the future. So it's not just simply the hardware side of things from an upgrade perspective. It's how do we handle that physical content? What do we do with that content? And so software becomes vital. So from a managed network environment, particularly on the wireless side of things, being able to justify to clients why a managed network is important. Obviously, we've spoken about some of these things, such as expanding demand. We'll continue to expand the network and the need for performance. Performance becomes central when looking at the service level agreements that oftentimes MSPs will have with their clients, or their clients can't afford to be disconnected and have issues. The other thing would be user visibility becomes central when everyone needs basically bring your own content and personalized experience. So on one hand, while we are expanding at a larger and very, very quick rate because of the numbers of individual and numbers of connected devices, we are also creating an environment whereby every one of those can have a specialized experience. And so how do you then make sure with managed Wi-Fi to be able to customize solutions that are, on one hand, globally accepted by the customer, but yet individually driven for the actual use and efficiency of the individual user themselves. Also, the faster upgrade cycles can also lead to confusion and higher costs, whereby clients are upgrading to technology that they either don't need just yet or don't realize are realistically shorter-term technology than what they actually previously understood. So management, by having a managed wireless network, you can actually compensate and make sure that customer can future-proof their network, not just simply from a hardware perspective, but also, more importantly, from a software perspective as well. And that's where you also see some of the cost savings. By using a software-driven system, you can leverage features over a longer period of time to make sure that the client experience is a positive one for a longer period of time. And then overall, from a savings perspective and revenue perspective, you have greater flexibility, platform flexibility. By having a managed wireless network environment, you're better able to monitor and make sure that customer's network is up based on the SLA that's provided to that client. You have greater visibility into that environment, thereby reducing cost returns, on-site visits, as well as increasing profitability in general. So what we're going to run through really quickly is just sort of an example of that, right? The evolution of technology and some of the benefits that, from a managed wireless perspective, that often come to play. And in that decision, 802.11 is going through a change, obviously, from wave 1 to wave 2. And oftentimes, customers are going to their providers asking, well, should I stay or should I go? Kind of thoughts, and what solution providers have to outline are both the positives and negatives, right? The benefits of both, while at the same time understanding what the customer's actual requirements and needs are. And so when we look at 802.11ac from an MSP perspective, understanding the details as far as the technology itself is concerned, whether or not there are more channels, there are more frequencies, the details from a beamform and multi-user perspective, what does that actually mean? So staying connected and trained by the vendor themselves becomes vital for an MSP to have a proper managed wireless network environment. And then obviously understanding the backward compatibility, because even though the quote-unquote marketing hype can say things are backward compatible or it works with everything, oftentimes we know that from a deployment standpoint, that is definitely not the case as well. And in that decision-making process, you understand from a managed perspective what the capabilities are to continue to grow in the long run, as well as what the expandability of the solution then becomes. And so having a managed platform allows you to not only better use the technology as it sits today, but it also allows you to then look at business models that may not have been considered in the past from a client perspective. If they can now manage that environment, their employees may be far more mobile than they were before. Being able to go on site, go see customers, get into new market segments that they historically have not been able to get into as well, by having a more managed, physically managed environment as well. And as a result, what ends up happening is that from a bottom line perspective, the managed wireless enables the client as well as the MSP to then balance that decision to make the right decision. Understand what the pros and cons are, what the considerations are, and what the summary is as well, so that as they move forward, they know the length of how long that technology will stay relevant. They'll also understand the other surrounding needs from a technology perspective, because maybe it's not just simply the fact that I switched from 11AC wave 1 to wave 2. There may be other circumstantial items such as cabling and PoE requirements, and then obviously switch upgrades as well in the future. So one last part of this example also goes to show that from a managed perspective as well, speaks to what the client is actually doing with the network, and helping that client actually decide on whether or not now is the time to physically upgrade or later is the time to physically upgrade. So when you're managing the wireless network, you better understand what that customer is doing, whether or not 11AC wave 1, wave 2, the timing of that rollout also becomes important, or if some of the future technologies may actually be more appropriate for that particular customer. And in order to do all of that, having a managed environment enables a better decision-making process by both the user as well as their service provider also. So it comes down to being able to ask those few questions and understand the customer's environment better, as well as the number of tools that are given, whether or not it's found on the internet or provided by the actual vendor themselves on that network. So sort of phasing into the last part of this, how are we helping sort of a more managed provider approach to wireless technology? So when we look at technology from a wireless perspective, we're obviously looking at it from a performance. It has to be software driven, as we mentioned, increases the flexibility. As a result, 85% of networks out there can be configured with our product line. And part of the reason for that is because we're able to change the mode of the product as opposed to changing the hardware of the actual device itself. The opportunity side of things, having advanced features so that the technology can be future-proof to deal with content flows as opposed to simply upgrading a piece of hardware as well. And then obviously from a business model on the MSP service side of things, having fewer licensing and reducing the initial hardware cost as well is a significant part of that value. So when we look at how content is handled, we start to shift the business conversation from a managed wireless perspective, just away from just simply upgrading a piece of hardware, from technology to technology, because as we previously saw, technology will continue to change and evolve. They're really focusing in on the core three aspects that we discussed earlier: the content, the flexibility of the solution, and the visibility of that information and what can you then do with it. And so as the information comes into any of our systems, whether it's the all-wireless system or a flexible premise controller system, we're able to see the packet information, understand where that packet is going, understand how that packet should be treated. Our patented ICX engine balances that information so that we don't drop packets, and then transferring that technology out as well. So net-net, what ends up happening, it drives up performance because you're driving up efficiency within the solution to handle the flood of content that's coming from the user devices, whether those are multiple devices or those are devices that are pushing higher value and higher bandwidth required content as well. So by shifting that architecture and having a flexible architecture dealing and focusing on content, we then drive the evolution of the business from an IP data connectivity perspective, reducing costs, increasing the speed due to policy control, as well as reducing fees, and then obviously service level revenues at 100% based on the managed service provider that we're actually speaking with as well. So these become vital when we're talking about this tsunami of BYOD, BYOC, all of the alphabet soup names that are out there. And the biggest one, of course, is the Internet of Things. Basically, the more content that's put on a network, how do you deal with that content? Because at the end of the day, it's so much content, we have to look at efficiency, not just simply the upgrade path from one technology to another. So the last part of the presentation, which will take roughly another 5 minutes, is to really look at, okay, so we've talked about why we're seeing this flood of content. We've also talked about how we handle that flood of content. Now we're going to talk about what do we do with that information. At ICC Networking, we have two systems, ICX Manager and ICX Cloud, both of which have been divided out. One is really more of a monitoring, alert management, multi-location service system that's multi-tenant. Our channel partners can use that system hosted by ICC as a way to monitor their client environments. And then the ICX Cloud is more of a data analytics, monetization, marketing, ad-based wireless kind of environment. Once again, multi-tenant as well. The reason why we have these two in two separate boxes, because typically most vendors, either they don't have a solution of their own, so they recommend someone else, or the solution that they've put together must be used together so that they can charge an ongoing fee to the customer. These are separate because we don't charge an ongoing fee to the customer. Should someone not use the system, their access points and their systems and controllers still stay alive and move forward. But the important thing here to also look at is the fact that connectivity and content does equal monetization, right? Having the proper connectivity, as we spoke about, and now having the ability to see all of the content that comes through our system, then we are able to then do data analytics, location-based services, reporting, and other features that allow IT communities to then better understand what's going on in their actual network. And those things, those tools can include everything from being able to do ad banners and campaigns, geotagging, device tracking itself, right? What type of devices are on that network? Are they more iOS devices? Are they more Android devices? Demographics of the actual users as well within that physical environment. So we get to a point where now the network as itself becomes a tool for the IT to use as well as marketing to use based on the business model that they're looking at. Moreover, the ad-based revenue side of things also continues to shift to more of a mobile device environment as we see advertisers starting to understand the dramatic increase from a mobile device perspective, and starting to then want to take advantage of that, advertise on those mobile devices, whether or not those are phones, smartphones, tablets, et cetera, and do that in a variety of different ways, whether or not those are banner ads, offer walls, video ads, and other things. And understanding those different formats become vital. But more importantly than that, understanding how ICC interacts with those different formats by being able to still have captive portals embedded in all of our solutions, unified Wi-Fi platforms that then feed information back to these systems, as well as still staying from a security perspective, PCI compliant, so that credit card purchases and credit card information is still held separate and compliant from a security perspective as well. So how does this actually physically work? As we're getting this information from an ad-based side of things, the solutions itself has to be intelligent enough, as we keep saying, these are not unmanaged solutions, have to be intelligent enough to be able to interact with these external repositories of information. And from our smallest solution, the ICX10 here, that incorporates routing, firewall, captive portal, and a whole host of other feature sets, we're able to then get that information, user data, and that user data is then uploaded into the ICX Manager or the ICX Cloud, giving our partners the ability to then monetize that information, whether or not they're working with, let's just say, local ad shops that maybe it's local pizzerias and other places that they're putting ads that push to the users of that network, or they're working with larger national environments, ad environments that then push ads through the system and then to the actual physical user as well. So you have that flexibility, allows for more options and different business models based on the requirements of the actual user. More importantly, we also see from a deployment standpoint, from an IoT perspective, you're able to also maintain security, content control, and then obviously management. As we talked about, the content itself, in order to make sure that we handle this tsunami of content as well as tsunami of devices coming through, we have to properly separate those devices, understand what that content is, and then obviously manage that content across that network environment to ensure security. As a way in which to help our partners, and this is our second to last slide, what we've also devised is a pilot program called a White Glove Service Try Before You Buy program. What it allows all of our partners, and we invite everyone on in this training to do this, is that you're allowed a free 30-day evaluation. We take you through a deep dive technical training to understand how the product works, how it sets up, how the ICX Manager and ICX Cloud environments set up and interact with the actual physical product. We then help you decide which product is best for an initial review. We then go through the evaluation documentation, product is shipped, and then we walk you through the process from an integration standpoint, right, to test it. You know, if it's a multi-location food service industry, a restaurant with 40 locations or 10 locations or 5 locations, and they want to do a pilot at one location, we help walk you through that pilot, understand what's needed, help adjust things if necessary, and then obviously understand what the outcomes are, right? You know what needs to be reviewed, and we do this with our partner because really it's our channel partners that are executing on these. We're simply enabling them with the platform as well, until we get to a point where the customer is happy with things, and then they're able to do an official rollout and launch. In order to find out more about the program and also get more information on the hardware as well, and just ask us general questions, please feel free to contact Amanda Fraser or myself for any amount of detail. And we thank you very much for joining us for this webinar.